He was blind, freezing, and invisible to the crowd. Until a broke teen on a rusty bike stopped, took his hand, and pedaled him through the storm. She thought she was saving him, but the next morning her face was everywhere, accused of exploiting. What she didn't know was that the man was a billionaire, and that one small act of compassion would change her life forever. Welcome back, fam. I appreciate you. Help us grow. Hit like, subscribe, and share. And tell me where you're watching from and the time right now. Let's get into it. The city was half asleep under a layer of ice, every breath turning to smoke in the air. Zuri Hale pushed her bike harder up the hill, the chain squealing like it wanted to quit before she did. Her fingers were stiff inside torn gloves, her stomach a hollow ache that hadn't been fed properly in 2 days. She whispered to herself between gasps, "One more delivery. One more night." The phone in her pocket buzzed. She didn't need to check it. She already knew what it said. The last message from her manager glowed behind her eyelids like a warning sign. Last warning. One more late delivery, and she was done. And without the job, no paycheck. Without the paycheck, no rent. The streets of Maplebrook were empty, the snow falling heavier now, swallowing the sound of everything but her wheels grinding against slush. The scent of iron and chimney smoke drifted through the cold, familiar and distant, like a memory of warmth she couldn't afford. Zuri turned the corner near the old bus depot and froze. Under a flickering streetlight stood a man. His gray hair was dusted with snow, his black wool coat hanging loose and uneven on his frail frame. He held a cane, tapping it uncertainly against the curb, his gloved fingers trembling. His eyes were open but unfocused, clouded like frosted glass. Blind. Lost. For a second, Zuri's first instinct was to look away. She had no time for this. The clock on her cracked phone said 7:47. The order had to be done by 8. If she stopped now, she'd lose everything. Her foot hovered over the pedal. "Keep going," her brain hissed. "You can't afford kindness." But her mother's voice, quiet, warm, stubborn, rose in her head instead. "If someone's alone, you stop, baby. Doesn't matter who they are." Zuri cursed under her breath and hit the brakes. The old man flinched at the sound of tires crunching on snow. She climbed off the bike, breath fogging the air between them. "Sir, you okay out here?" He turned slightly toward her voice, his cane twitching. "The bus," he murmured. "It was supposed to come, but the lights, they went out." Zuri looked down the road. The bus schedule nailed to the post was buried in frost. The routes had stopped running an hour ago. "Where do you live?" He hesitated. "Whitaker Row, by the river." Her heart sank. That was miles away, uphill and across town. She'd never make her delivery on time. But his lips were blue, his thin gloves soaked through. She noticed the tremor in his hands, the way he tried to stand tall but lean slightly, like he was losing a battle with gravity. "Okay," she muttered to herself, then louder, "Let's get you warm first." Before he could protest, she slipped her scarf off and wrapped it around his neck. "It's not much," she said, tightening the knot. "But it's something." He blinked, surprised. "You're very kind." Zuri shrugged. "Don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation to keep." That made him smile, a small tired lift at the corners of his mouth. She checked her bike, wiped snow off the back rack. "Can you sit here? I'll take it slow." "I don't want to be a burden." "Too late," she said, grinning faintly. "You already are." He chuckled, soft but real. With effort, he climbed onto the back, hands trembling as they found her shoulders. "Hold on tight," she said, gripping the handlebars. And then they were off. The tires cut through ice, spraying slush behind them. The cold bit into her face like a knife, but she leaned forward, pedaling hard. The man, Walter, he'd whispered when she asked, kept his cane tucked close, his voice lost in the wind. A car whooshed past too close, sending a wave of dirty snow water across them. Zuri gasped, blinking it from her eyes. Behind her, Walter gave a small, brittle laugh, the kind that sounds like it forgot how to exist. "You're laughing?" she shouted over the wind. "Feels good to be moving again," he said, breath shaking. "Haven't heard the snow like this in years." Zuri frowned. "Heard it?" "Yes." His tone softened, almost dreamy. "When it hits the ground, each flake sounds different. My wife used to say it's like tiny bells." His words trembled, but not from the cold. Zuri felt something shift in her chest. She didn't know if it was pity or warmth, but it pushed her to pedal harder. They passed the river bend. The streetlights flickered gold on the water, making the world shimmer like melted glass. Walter's grip on her shoulder loosened. "Still with me?" she asked. "Yes, dear, just remembering." A few minutes later, they turned onto Whitaker Row, where the buildings grew taller and older. Grand brownstones loomed in silence, their windows glowing amber behind wrought iron fences. Zuri slowed to a stop in front of one with marble steps and a white gate dusted in snow. Walter's hand lifted toward it, trembling slightly. That's home." Before she could help him down, a doorman burst out from behind the glass door. His face went pale. "Mr. Hensley! Lord, where have you been?" "Went for a walk," Walter murmured with a weary smile. "Or a ride, I suppose." The doorman hurried down, taking Walter's arm. "You shouldn't be out alone, sir. It's freezing." Then he looked at Zuri, wet, breathless, half frozen. "Did you bring him here?" "Yeah," she said. "Found him waiting at the bus stop." The man's eyes softened. "You're an angel, miss. Please, come inside. Warm yourself." Zuri shook her head. "No, I've got to, get back. Delivery." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a wrinkled delivery receipt, and tore a piece from it. Scribbling quickly with a dull pencil, she pressed the paper into Walter's hand. "In case you need help again, call me." He held the paper carefully, like it might break. "Thank you," he whispered. "You've done more than you know." She smiled faintly. "Just don't freeze next time, okay?" As the doorman guided him inside, Zuri climbed back onto her bike. The warmth from the house spilled into the cold, golden against the snow. But she didn't let herself stop. She pedaled away into the dark, the chain rattling, her breath shallow, her heart strangely light. Neither she nor Walter noticed the faint glow of a phone across the street. A passerby holding it up. Recording. By the time Zuri reached the boarding house, her legs felt like lead. The street was silent, except for the creak of her bike as she parked it by the stairs. Then she saw it. A plastic bag on the step, her clothes spilling out, her name scrawled across a note taped to the door. Rent late. Lock changed. The cold outside suddenly didn't feel any different from the one inside her chest. The snow hadn't stopped. It whispered against the windows, steady and cruel, like the world was reminding Zuri how small she was. She stood on the porch of the boarding house, staring at the note taped to the door. Rent late. Lock changed, as her breath fogged the cold glass. Her fingers were numb, her stomach empty, and her throat hurt from holding back the sound she wanted to make. She pounded once on the door. "Mr. Barnes," she called. "Please, just give me one more day." Nothing. Only the hiss of wind in the gutter. She slid down the wall, hugging her knees, the plastic bag with her life inside crinkling beside her. Her phone buzzed weakly in her pocket. She didn't want to look, but the glow was too bright to ignore. "Manager. Where were you tonight?" the client complained. Zuri's thumb trembled as she typed. "I had an emergency. There was an old man. He was blind, lost." The call came before she could finish. She answered fast. "Mr. Doyle, please." His voice was clipped, bored, and loud enough to make her flinch. "You think I care about some sob story? The client canceled the contract. You cost me money." "I can fix it." No, you can't, he snapped. You're done, Zuri. Bring the uniform back when you can. Last pays next week. Maybe. Her mouth went dry. Next week? I need it now. I don't even... The call clicked dead. For a second, she just sat there listening to the snow and the faraway hum of traffic. Then she laughed under her breath, a low, brittle sound that turned into a cough. Perfect, she whispered to no one. Just perfect. She stood and slung her bag over her shoulder, the straps biting her frozen fingers. There was nowhere left to go except forward. The city was half asleep by the time she reached Green's Market, a little corner store that never truly closed. Its neon open sign flickered red over fogged glass. The inside looked like heaven compared to the street. Yellow light, faint music, the smell of old coffee and floor cleaner. A bell jingled as she pushed the door open. Behind the counter, a woman in her 50s looked up, silver curls escaping her scarf. Her name tag read, Mrs. Green. "We're about to close, sweetheart," she said, voice gentle but cautious. "I know," Zuri said quickly. "I'm sorry, I just..." Her voice cracked. She swallowed it down. "It's freezing out. I don't need food. Just somewhere warm for an hour. I can work for it. Clean, stock shelves, whatever you want." From the back, a man appeared. Tall, slick hair, narrow face, a sneer already forming. "Derek," his tag read. "We're not a shelter," he said flatly, "and we don't need pity hires." Mrs. Green shot him a look. "That's enough." Then to Zuri. "You said you'll work? Grab a mop. Floors by the freezer need attention." Zuri nodded quickly. "Thank you, ma'am. Really." She found the bucket, filled it at the sink, and started to work. The rhythm of the mop against tile steadied her shaking hands. For the first time that night, her body started to thaw. Derek lingered near the counter, watching. "You one of those delivery kids?" he asked finally. Zuri didn't look up. "Was." He smirked. "Figures." He leaned against the register. "What did you do? Crash someone's dinner?" "Leave her alone," Mrs. Green said quietly, scribbling inventory notes. But Derek wasn't finished. "Nah, I saw you somewhere." He pulled out his phone, scrolling. "You that girl from the picture?" Zuri froze. "What picture?" He turned the screen toward her. There it was, her rusty bike, the old man on the back, snow swirling around them. The caption read, "Teen rides blind man through blizzard, hero or hustle." Zuri's stomach dropped. "Where did you—" "It's everywhere," Derek interrupted, grinning. "People can't decide if it's sweet or staged. Half the comments say you're an angel. The other half say you're fishing for money." He tilted his head. "So, which is it?" "Neither," she said quietly. "I just helped him." He gave a low laugh. "Sure you did." His eyes flicked toward the register drawer. "Bet you help yourself just fine, too." Mrs. Green's pen paused mid-scratch. "Derek," she said softly, warning in her tone. He shrugged. "I'm just saying. Don't act shocked if the drawer's light in the morning." Zuri gripped the mop tighter, biting her tongue. She wanted to say something, anything, but she was too tired to fight. When she finished cleaning, she put the mop away and leaned against the counter. "You want me to leave now?" Mrs. Green studied her for a moment, then she sighed, reaching under the counter. "There's a cot in the back room. You can stay till morning." Zuri's breath caught. I don't want to get you in trouble." "You won't," Mrs. Green said, her voice firm. "You're safe for now." Derek muttered something under his breath and stomped into the stockroom. For a moment, peace settled in. The heater buzzed softly, the radio hummed old R&B, and Zuri felt the first warmth reach her bones. But it didn't last. At 1:13 a.m., the bell above the door rang again. No one came in. Zuri frowned. Then Derek stormed out of the stockroom, waving a slip of paper. "Till's short by $40. His glare cut to her. "You took it." Zuri blinked. "What? No, I didn't even—" Mrs. Green straightened behind the counter, her face unreadable. "Everyone stop talking." She pressed a button under the counter. The hum of the neon sign flickered out. The lights overhead died, leaving only the glow of the fridge door bulbs. A minute of silence. Then Mrs. Green opened a small monitor behind the register. Black and white footage played back quietly, Derek's hand dipping into the drawer an hour ago while Zuri mopped the floor. Derek's face drained of color. "You... how long—" Mrs. Green crossed her arms. "Long enough." He slammed his hand against the counter. "You can't prove—" "I just did," she said simply. "Get out, Derek." He stared at Zuri, hate glinting in his eyes. "This isn't over," he hissed, then shoved through the door, the bell shrieking after him. Mrs. Green watched him disappear into the storm before turning to Zuri. "You did good work," she said quietly. "Now get some sleep." The back room smelled like cardboard and coffee grounds, but to Zuri it was paradise. She lay down on the narrow cot, wrapping her jacket over herself. The hum of the refrigerator and the gentle rhythm of snow outside lulled her toward sleep. As her eyes closed, she thought she heard bells, soft, distant, like the old man had described, each note fading into white noise. When she woke, it was still dark. The clock on the wall said 5:22. Mrs. Green was nowhere in sight. But through the fogged window, Zuri saw it, headlights slicing through the falling snow. A black car idled by the curb, sleek and silent, exhaust curling like breath. The door opened, and a woman stepped out, her charcoal coat brushing the snow. She walked straight to the door, heels clicking, eyes sharp and calm. Zuri stood up just as the bell chimed. "Zuri Hale?" the woman asked. Her voice was smooth as glass. "My name is Ms. Porter. Mr. Hensley would like to see you." The black car purred through the snow like it belonged to another universe. Zuri sat in the back seat, gripping the strap of her bag so tightly her knuckles went white. The leather smelled expensive, sharp and clean, like something she had no business touching. Outside, the city blurred past in streaks of white and gray, buildings bowing under the weight of the storm. The driver said nothing. Neither did the woman beside him, Ms. Porter, the one who'd appeared at the store before dawn. Her posture was straight as a ruler, her charcoal coat uncreased, her hair in a knot that didn't dare move. The only sound came from the windshield wipers cutting through the snow. Zuri cleared her throat. "Where exactly are we going?" Ms. Porter didn't look away from the road. "Mr. Hensley would like to thank you in person." Zuri frowned. "For what?" A pause. "For bringing him home last night." Zuri blinked. "Wait, Walter? The old man? You mean he's—" "Yes." Ms. Porter's tone softened slightly. "Walter Hensley, founder of Hensley Holdings, one of the oldest private tech philanthropists in the country." Zuri slumped back in her seat. "You're kidding." "I never kid," Ms. Porter said. Zuri stared out the window, watching the snow thicken. Somewhere out there, she'd biked through this storm with him clinging to her shoulder, thinking he was just another lonely stranger. Now she was in a billionaire's car, with a woman who looked like she fired people for breathing wrong. She muttered, mostly to herself, "I didn't even know billionaires took the bus." That made Ms. Porter glance at her. For a second, something like amusement flickered in her eyes. Then she turned back to the windshield. "Mr. Hensley doesn't exactly follow rules, or schedules." They turned down a street lined with brownstones, each one pristine and quiet beneath its white roof. The car slowed in front of one with a wrought iron gate and ivy frozen to the walls. Ms. Porter stepped out first, opening Zuri's door. "Inside, please." The warmth hit her instantly, like stepping into sunlight. The smell of lemon polish and old wood filled the air. Everything gleamed. Mahogany floors, gold-framed paintings, tall windows letting in the soft glow of snowlight. A fireplace crackled at the far end of the room. Beside it sat Walter, dressed neatly this time in a navy sweater, his black wool coat folded over the arm of a chair. He turned his head as they entered, his clouded eyes lighting up. "Ah," he said, smiling. "My rescuer arrives." Zuri froze near the doorway. "You don't have to... it wasn't a big deal." Walter chuckled softly. "It was, actually. You stopped. When everyone else didn't." Ms. Porter helped guide him toward the sitting area. He waved her off gently. "I can manage." Then to Zuri. "Please, sit. I'd offer you a blanket, but I imagine you'd prefer answers first." She sat hesitantly on the edge of an armchair, her damp jacket sticking to the cushion. "I didn't know who you were. I just saw someone freezing." "That's exactly why I wanted to thank you," Walter said. His voice was steady but kind. "Most people see what they can take. You saw what you could give." He paused, smiling faintly. "You didn't see a billionaire. You saw a person." Zuri shifted, unsure what to do with praise that didn't feel earned. "You don't have to thank me. I just didn't want you dying out there." His smile deepened. "Well, I'm glad you didn't. My wife used to say I'd wander off chasing sounds. I suppose she was right." Ms. Porter, still standing, raised an eyebrow. "He means the bells," she explained quietly. "The bells?" Walter nodded. "I went out to listen to them. Church bells across the river. My wife loved them. Every winter she'd open the window to hear the snow hit the sill." He tilted his head, listening now, as if he could still hear it. "I thought maybe I could find her again in the sound." Zuri swallowed, her chest tightening. "That's kind of beautiful." He smiled sadly. "Kind of foolish, too. You don't have to tell me." They fell into a gentle silence, broken only by the fire's crackle. After a moment, Walter said, "You've been through enough. Let me do something small. Breakfast? Coffee?" She shook her head quickly. "I just need to charge my phone." Ms. Porter blinked. "That's all?" "Yeah, I've got job applications to send out. Can't do much without a phone." Walter leaned back, thoughtful. "Then maybe I can offer something better than breakfast." He gestured toward Ms. Porter. "Porter, tell her what we need around here." Ms. Porter hesitated. "Mr. Hensley." "Humor me," he said. With a reluctant sigh, she said, "He needs someone to help with errands, reading labels, describing rooms, checking emails for visual details. He's losing most of his sight." Zuri blinked. "You mean, be your eyes?" "In a way," Walter said with a smile. "I'd pay fairly. You could stay here for a few weeks while we get organized." She laughed under her breath. "You're offering a job to a stranger who found you on the street?" "Stranger?" he said lightly. "You've already saved my life once. I think that qualifies as an interview." Zuri looked at Ms. Porter, who gave a small, restrained nod. "You don't have to decide now," she said, tone gentle but firm. "But be aware, your face is starting to circulate. People are asking who you are." Zuri frowned. "Why?" Ms. Porter tapped her phone screen. "A bystander filmed you last night. The internet's arguing whether you're an angel or a con artist." Zuri groaned. "Seriously? I just gave a guy a ride home." "That's how fame starts," Ms. Porter said dryly. Walter chuckled. "Let them argue. Truth has a way of surviving noise." He turned toward a long table near the window. Rolled papers lay spread across it, held down by glass weights. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. Zuri stood and moved closer. She unrolled a corner. Blue lines, room layouts, and hand-drawn notes spilled across the page. At the top, one word was written in faded ink: Havenlight. "It was my wife's idea," Walter said. "Shelters for youth, places to eat, sleep, learn. We built the first one, but—" His voice thinned. "After she passed, I couldn't finish." Zuri traced one of the drawings, a dorm room layout, too neat to feel real. "These are nice," she said. "But you'll need lockers, somewhere safe for people to keep their stuff. Showers, too. Most shelters kick you out at sunrise. It should open earlier, close later." Walter smiled, the expression soft and full of pride. "You sound like someone who knows what's missing." "I do," she said quietly. "I've been there." The firelight flickered over his face as he nodded. "Then maybe you're the person who can help me fix it." Zuri hesitated, torn between disbelief and something that almost felt like hope. Before she could answer, Ms. Porter's phone chimed sharply. She glanced down and froze. Her expression darkened. "Sir," she said carefully, "you'll want to see this." On the screen glowed a headline from a gossip site, paired with the same photo Derek had shown hours earlier. "Billionaire's mystery teen, gold digger or guardian angel?" The warmth in the room faltered. Zuri's stomach dropped. Walter exhaled slowly, his voice calm but weary. "Well," he murmured, "it seems the world's already decided to watch." The next morning, the sound of voices broke the quiet. Not the gentle hum of the city waking, but sharper, layered with camera clicks and questions barked through iron gates. Zuri stood by the upstairs window, half hidden behind the curtain. Below, a dozen reporters huddled in the snow, breath fogging up their lenses. Signs hung over the gate. Angel or act? And who is the girl on the bike? Ms. Porter's voice echoed from downstairs, calm but tight. "No statements. Please leave the property." A man in a gray parka shouted, "Does the girl live here now?" Another yelled, "Was this her plan all along?" Zuri flinched as a flash went off. "They're taking pictures of me." Walter's voice drifted from the sitting room, steady, unbothered. "Let them." She turned. He was seated near the fire, his cane resting beside him, expression unreadable. "We don't hide from kindness," he said, "even when the world mistakes it for a trick." "I'm not hiding," she said quietly. "I just don't like being turned into a headline." He smiled faintly. "You'll get used to noise. It's the tax for doing anything decent." Ms. Porter entered with a file pressed to her chest. "We've had 30 interview requests in 12 hours. And someone leaked your hospital donation records, sir. They're trying to paint this as a publicity stunt." Walter waved a hand dismissively. If truth can't stand alone, it was never truth. Before Ms. Porter could reply, the front door opened again. A gust of cold air swept in along with a man in a designer coat and a practiced smile. "Gregory Nash," he announced, removing his gloves. "Walter's financial advisor. Or used to be, before retirement became optional." His voice was warm, but his eyes were calculating. He shook Walter's hand, then turned to Ms. Porter. "You've got quite the storm brewing, Portia. The internet loves a good savior story, until it doesn't." "Mr. Nash," Ms. Porter said coolly, "now's not the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time," Gregory replied, dropping his coat onto the armchair like he owned it. "Optics matter, and your new friend's generating all the wrong ones." His gaze slid toward Zuri, appraising, polished like a salesman's. "You've certainly made an impression." Zuri folded her arms. "I didn't mean to." "Ah," he said, "that's what makes it dangerous." Walter's jaw tightened. "Gregory, if you've come to scold, you can leave." The girl did what no one else would. She stopped. Gregory smiled thinly. "I'm sure she did. But people aren't as kind as she is, Walter. They're asking why a billionaire's blind walk home turned into a viral campaign for sympathy. He stepped closer to Ms. Porter, lowering his voice, but not enough for Zuri to miss. You should think about damage control before the board starts asking questions. Enough, Ms. Porter said. This isn't your business anymore. Oh, it will be, he murmured. Then louder, to Walter. You know where to reach me when this gets messy. He left with a too bright smile, the kind that hides a bruise behind it. By afternoon, the internet had picked its battlefield. Hashtags spread like wildfire. Snow Angel versus Street Hustler. One side flooded feeds with praise and poetry. Humanity still exists. Faith in people restored. The other side clawed back harder. Scripted charity. Pity porn for clicks. Someone even dug up her eviction post. A photo of her bag in the snow with the note, "Rent late, lock changed." The caption, "Funny how she had time to save billionaires, but not her own life." Zuri saw it when she checked her phone that night, scrolling until her eyes burned. They know where I used to live, she whispered. Ms. Porter stood nearby, her expression unreadable. That's how it works. The public builds you up, then eats you alive. I didn't ask for any of this, Zuri muttered. Walter's voice came softly from the study doorway. You didn't have to. Doing the right thing is invitation enough. He crossed the room slowly, his cane tapping once for every word. We can't control what they say, only what we build in spite of it. He gestured toward the long table by the window. The Havenlight blueprints spread open again. Porter tells me you had thoughts about the intake system. Care to elaborate? Zuri hesitated, glancing between them. It's simple. Most shelters make people line up outside in the cold for hours. You should have a check-in system that lets them register early, online or by text. Give them lockers, showers, a way to feel human again. That's what keeps them coming back. Walter smiled faintly, pride glowing behind his clouded eyes. Porter, make a note. She sees what we've forgotten. Ms. Porter nodded, but her phone vibrated again on the table. She glanced down, then frowned. What now? Zuri asked. Another wave, Ms. Porter murmured. Someone's amplifying it. Too organized for random trolls. Gregory, Walter said simply. That evening, the gates outside were still swarming with cameras, though fewer now. A TV van idled by the curb, headlights painting the snow gold. Inside, Walter sat across from 3 donors, 2 men in dark suits and a woman with pearl earrings, while Zuri waited awkwardly near the door. Walter gestured for her to step forward. Tell them, Zuri, why Havenlight matters. Her throat tightened. Me? Yes, he said. You've lived it. I've only imagined it. The donors exchanged skeptical glances. Zuri took a breath and stepped closer. When you lose everything, she began, people stop looking at you. You turn invisible. The only time you're seen is when someone's afraid of you or trying to save you for a photo. But real help? Her voice steadied. It's warmth, safety, a place that remembers your name. That's what Havenlight could be. Not a shelter, a restart. The room fell silent. Even the donors leaned forward, moved despite themselves. One of them, the woman with pearls, smiled faintly. You speak well, dear. Where did you learn that? Zuri met her gaze evenly. Cold nights and borrowed time. Walter chuckled softly. She's not just learning, my dear. She's surviving. There's a difference. When the meeting ended, the donors promised to consider a contribution. But as they left, Ms. Porter's phone lit again with a new notification. She didn't open it immediately, just stared at the preview. What now? Walter asked. Ms. Porter turned the screen toward him, and Zuri. A still image glowed on the screen. Zuri, cropped from a video. standing near a donation lockbox during the event, her hand halfway extended. The caption below read in bold white letters, "She took more than a hand." Zuri's breath caught. "That's fake. I never—" "I know," Ms. Porter said grimly, "but truth won't matter now." Outside, through the frosted window, the cameras flashed again, hungry and merciless. Walter exhaled slowly, cane pressing against the floor. "Then," he said quietly, "we'd better show them what light looks like in a storm." The days after the scandal felt like walking through fog. Quiet, uncertain, but still forward. The doctored image had made its rounds online, the words "she took more than a hand" echoing across feeds and headlines. Walter refused to comment. "We'll let the work speak," he said simply. And somehow, that was enough to keep Zuri going. By the end of the week, Ms. Porter announced they'd found a site. "An old schoolhouse by the river," she said, flipping through a folder thick with papers. "Abandoned since 2011, structurally sound, needs love." Zuri studied the faded photos. Brick walls chipped by salt, ivy crawling up windows, a rusted bell tower leaning like it was tired. "It's perfect," she whispered. Walter smiled from his armchair, the sunlight tracing the edges of his white hair. "Then let's give it purpose again." The next day, they stood before it in person. The building smelled of dust and sea air, the floorboards groaning underfoot. Zuri walked through the halls with a flashlight, dust motes swirling in its beam. In her head she could already see it, the sleeping mats, the painted walls, lockers lining the corridors instead of broken desks. Union volunteers arrived by the weekend, bundled in work coats and good intentions. "We'll give our Saturdays," one of them said. "You just keep showing up." Zuri did. She showed up every day. Between construction noise and endless phone calls, life inside Walter's house took on a new rhythm. Mornings began with mail sorting. Walter insisted on feeling every envelope, memorizing textures. Smooth paper for business, thick grain for donors, glossy for junk. By noon, they'd walk the greenhouse behind the brownstone. It had become his refuge, all citrus trees and quiet light. He would trail his fingers along the lemon branches, inhaling deeply. "My wife planted these," he told Zuri once. "Said the smell reminded her of sunlight. Now it just reminds me she's not here to smell it." Zuri had learned not to fill silences like that with words. She just nodded, touching one of the small yellow fruits. She had good taste. At noon, the church bells across the river rang faintly through the glass. Walter always stopped, listening. Sometimes he hummed along, a low, trembling sound that filled the space between them. Ms. Porter, once sharp-edged and distant, began to soften too. She'd visit the greenhouse in the evenings when she thought no one was around. One night, Zuri found her there, standing among the plants, her usual composure cracked by something tender. "Did you know," Ms. Porter said quietly, "the day his wife died, he stopped every project they had together? Havenlight was their dream. He locked the blueprints away for years. Wouldn't let anyone touch them. I thought he'd never try again." Zuri looked through the glass at Walter sitting near the fire inside. His silhouette framed by light. "What changed?" "You," Ms. Porter said simply. "You reminded him people still need saving." Renovation became its own heartbeat. Zuri painted walls while Walter listened from a chair, describing what she saw aloud. "Pale yellow," she said once, brushing a stroke across plaster. "Like sunlight after a storm." He smiled. "That's what we're building then, after a storm." Union carpenters replaced windows. Electricians rewired old circuits. Even the local bakery donated bread for volunteers. Zuri drafted new intake rules at the kitchen table. No lines in the cold, no lights out by force, lockers for every guest. Every corner of the schoolhouse started to change, piece by piece, into something alive again. But the outside world hadn't gone quiet. Gregory Nash resurfaced like oil in water. An anonymous insider began feeding tabloid stories about a runaway teen manipulating a grieving man. His quotes dripped with smug authority. It's concerning, to say the least. Derek, bitter and jobless, gave the papers his own version of events. He painted Zuri as trouble, street smart in all the wrong ways. One article used his exact words. "I saw how she looks at money, like it owes her." Zuri stopped checking her phone after that. Every headline felt like a bruise she didn't need to press. By the second month, Havenlight began to take shape. The floors gleamed with fresh polish, the intake desk was built from reclaimed wood, and the scent of paint still lingered faintly in the halls. Walter insisted on walking every room, one hand on Zuri's arm, the other tracing the walls. "I want to feel it," he said. "Every inch of what we built." She guided him carefully, describing details aloud. Lockers on the left, small reading nook on the right. Windows look out over the river, water's still half frozen, but the ducks are back. He chuckled softly. "Sounds like hope." Zuri smiled. "Feels like it too." But hope was fragile. One afternoon, Dr. Wells arrived. Walter's physician, a kind-faced man in a wool cap. After his exam, he pulled Ms. Porter aside. Zuri pretended not to listen, but caught fragments. Blood pressure, exhaustion, stress. When he left, Ms. Porter lingered by the stairs, pale and tense. "He's pushing too hard," she said later, voice low. "He won't rest until this place opens." Zuri frowned. "Then I'll take more shifts. Let him rest." Ms. Porter gave her a look somewhere between gratitude and worry. "You're starting to sound like family," she said softly. Zuri shrugged. "Maybe that's not the worst thing to be." By early March, the schoolhouse had turned golden with life. Donations trickled in, quiet ones, private ones. The first Havenlight banner went up above the door, white letters bright against the brick. Zuri stood on the sidewalk beside Walter as the workers packed up for the day. The snow was melting fast now, puddles reflecting the fading light. "It's really happening," she said. Walter tilted his head toward the sound of the wind chime near the door. "It was always happening. We just needed the right hands." That night, Ms. Porter came into the sitting room holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. She hesitated before handing it over. "An invitation," she said. "The mayor's office wants to host the unveiling. Press, donors, the whole city watching." Walter smiled faintly, feeling the envelope's texture. "A celebration, then." Zuri met Ms. Porter's gaze and saw something sharp flicker behind her calm. Porter folded her arms. "Or a setup. If there's a hit coming, it's coming there." The wind rattled the windows, and somewhere far off, church bells began to ring. The night of the gala smelled like perfume and danger. Snow had returned to the city, soft, showy flakes that caught in the streetlights and melted before they touched the ground. The Havenlight Foundation gala banner shimmered above the Grand Hotel doors, letters gold against black velvet. Reporters clustered like crows outside, cameras flashing with hungry precision. Zuri stood in the shadow of the limousine, her breath trembling clouds into the cold. She wore a borrowed dress, silver gray, as simple and a little too big, and her faded purple jacket over it because no one could convince her to take it off. It was her only armor. Walter stepped out beside her, his hand steadying on her arm. "Ready?" he asked softly. "Not really," she admitted. "Good," he said, smiling faintly. "Means you're still human." Inside, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and the low hum of expensive laughter. Crystal glasses chimed, gowns swished, and donors whispered about the miracle project by the river. Ms. Porter moved like a sentinel at their side, every detail sharp. Clipboard, phone, eyes scanning for trouble. Zuri kept close to Walter, guiding him through the noise. He leaned on his cane, stopping often to greet familiar voices. "You've caused quite the ripple, my dear," one man said, shaking Zuri's hand. "City loves a redemption story." She smiled politely, but her stomach twisted. They didn't see her. They saw a headline that breathed for a week before the next scandal came. At the stage, Ms. Porter gave her a small nod. It was time. Zuri took the microphone, the room dimming as the light softened on her face. Her voice wavered at first, then found its center. "I don't have fancy words," she began. "I don't have the kind of life you write speeches about. I just know what it's like to need a bed and not find one, to need warmth and get ignored." The audience stilled. Cameras clicked quietly. A bed, a lock, a warm shower, those things can stop a life from breaking, she continued. That's what Haven Light is. Not charity, not pity, just a place to breathe again. Applause rippled, hesitant at first, then fuller. Walter smiled, his eyes damp. For a moment, it felt like light might win. Then the sound of polished shoes against marble broke the spell. "Beautiful speech," Gregory Nash said, stepping from the crowd. His tuxedo gleamed, his smile smooth as glass. "Truly moving, though perhaps misleading." Ms. Porter stiffened. "Gregory, not now." He ignored her. "Since transparency is such a noble cause, I think the public deserves a bit of it tonight." He lifted a folder, sleek, black, heavy, and passed it to a nearby journalist with theatrical ease. "Documents obtained this morning. Internal financials. Curious discrepancies. Funds redirected to a personal account. Belonging to—" He turned, savoring the pause. "Miss Zuri Hale." The words hit the room like a detonator. Flashbulbs exploded. Murmurs turned sharp, jagged. The journalist opened the folder. Flipping through printed spreadsheets marked with the Haven Light logo and columns of falsified transfers. "That's a lie," Zuri said instantly. Her voice cracked. "I don't even have an account." "Forgery is an ugly thing," Gregory interrupted smoothly. "But math isn't. Numbers don't lie." Ms. Porter snatched the folder from the reporter's hands, scanning it fast. "These are fake," she hissed. "These are fabricated." Walter's head tilted, confusion clouding his face. "Gregory, what are you doing?" "What you couldn't," he replied. "Protecting you." The room pulsed with whispers. "I knew it. Too good to be true. Another scammer. Poor old man." Zuri felt the heat close around her like a cage. Cameras found her eyes, microphones shoved forward. "Did you take his money? Was it all a con?" Her breath came shallow. "I didn't. I swear." Walter's cane slipped from his hand. The sound of it striking the floor cut through everything. He staggered, one hand clutching his chest. "Walter!" Zuri cried, moving toward him. But two security guards stepped between them, one raising his hand. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "for optics. We need you to leave." "For optics? He's sick." Ms. Porter's voice tore across the room. "Don't you touch her." Gregory smiled for the cameras, stepping into the flashlight glare like he'd rehearsed it. "Emotions are high," he said soothingly. "Let's not escalate. The Foundation will investigate internally." "Investigate?" Ms. Porter snapped. "You planted this." But her words drowned under the noise. Reporters shouting, guests murmuring, security ushering Zuri toward the doors. She caught one last glimpse of Walter collapsing into a chair, pale and trembling, Ms. Porter shouting for an ambulance. Then she was outside, swallowed by the cold. The snow fell harder now, thick and silent. Zuri sat on the brownstone steps, her jacket half-zipped, her hands shaking. Across her lap lay Walter's scarf, the same one she'd wrapped around his neck the night they met. It smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Somewhere behind her, the city that had lifted her up was already tearing her apart online. She unlocked her phone with trembling fingers. Notifications flooded her screen. Street hustler trending again. Teen fraud shocks, Haven Light Gala. From angel to con artist. Her vision blurred, the headlines smearing into snowflakes. She closed the phone, pressing the scarf to her chest. For the first time since that freezing night at the bus stop, Zuri felt truly invisible again. Above her, the church bells began to ring, soft, mournful, like they were tolling for something that had just broken beyond repair. Snow fell again that morning, soft as dust. The city looked calm from the outside, but inside Walter's brownstone, it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Ms. Porter hadn't slept. The table in front of her was covered in hard drives, USB sticks, coffee-stained notes, and a tower of labeled folders. She scrolled through old timestamps from Walter's security archives, her eyes red from hours of watching grainy footage. Every click was another hour of sleepless determination. When she finally froze the frame, her hand trembled. There it was, Gregory Nash, captured on an interior camera in Walter's office 3 weeks before the gala, slipping a flash drive into the foundation's main computer. The system logs confirmed it. He'd moved funds, then edited the transactions to trace back to Zuri's name. Ms. Porter exhaled shakily, then whispered to herself, "You arrogant fool!" She grabbed her phone. "Zuri," she said when the girl answered, voice thick from crying. "I need you to come in. We're about to flip the script." Down at Green's Market, Mrs. Green had her own revelation. The local news truck parked outside caught her attention, and before long, a reporter was at her counter, asking about the teen from the Haven Light scandal. Mrs. Green folded her arms, her voice steady as stone. "Zuri Hale saved that old man. She worked here for an hour when she had nowhere to go. You want a quote? Here's one. She didn't steal a thing, but my drawer came up short that night because my employee did." "Can you prove that?" the reporter asked. Mrs. Green reached under the counter and pulled out a small flash drive. "I can do better. I can show it." By evening, the puzzle had started connecting itself. Derek's digital fingerprints, his logins, his blog posts, the anonymous whistleblower site that accused Zuri, led straight back to his personal email. The IP addresses matched the market's Wi-Fi. When the local news station aired the segment that night, they didn't dramatize it. They didn't use the haunting piano music or the slow-motion shots of Zuri crying outside Haven Light. They just told the story straight. 3 minutes. They showed the bus stop footage, the one taken by the bystander that started everything. The wind, the snow. The image of a thin girl in a purple jacket helping a blind old man onto her bike. Then the temperature log, wind chill -15 degrees. The buses had stopped running at 7:10 p.m. That man would have frozen to death. Next, the market security video. Derek pocketing bills before accusing Zuri of theft. Finally, the foundation archives. Gregory Nash's betrayal, caught frame by frame. No narration, no commentary, just facts. When the segment ended, the internet did what it always did. But for once, it chose light. Wee Wee Zuri began trending. Donations poured in. People shared their own stories of strangers who stopped when no one else did. Even the same talk shows that mocked her now demanded to interview her again. This time, to apologize. By morning, Zuri's inbox was flooded with messages. Apologies, thank yous, offers. The city councilwoman, who had once called her a liability, now offered full building permits for Haven Light, no fees, no conditions. But Zuri didn't celebrate. Not yet. She was sitting in the greenhouse again, the faint scent of lemons and earth wrapping around her like a half-remembered dream. Walter sat across from her, frailer than she'd ever seen him. His hands shook as he traced the edge of a lemon leaf. "You were right," he said quietly. "Truth stands, if you give it time." Zuri smiled faintly. Truth took its sweet time this round. He chuckled, though it turned into a cough. "Patience was my wife's gift, not mine." Outside, the snow began to fall again, glowing gold under the greenhouse lights. Walter tilted his head toward the glass. "Tell me something," he said. "What color is it, when snow falls past lemons?" Zuri looked up at the drifting flakes, soft against the branches of green and gold. "It's white," she said. "But it glows yellow on the way down, like it can't decide what it wants to be." Walter nodded slowly, his cloudy eyes reflecting the faint light. "That's you then. Not just one color, not just one story." Zuri looked down at her hands. "Everyone's saying I should sue. Press charges against Gregory Derrick, all of them. And will you?" She shook her head. "No. I don't want energy for burning. I want it for building." Walter's lips curved faintly. "Then you've already won." That night, as the last volunteers left the schoolhouse, Ms. Porter came into Walter's study with a folder of documents. His doctor's warning echoed in her head. His heart was fragile, his body tired. Still, he sat upright at his desk, pen trembling between his fingers. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Havenlight needs permanence, not pity. She'll give it that." Zuri walked in quietly, her purple jacket damp from snow. "You're supposed to be resting." Walter smiled without looking up. "I am, in my own way." He finished the signature with a slow, deliberate stroke, then set the pen down. His breath trembled once before steadying. "Porter," he said softly, "bring the letter." She froze. "Walter?" He turned toward Zuri, his voice warm, though faint. "There's something I need her to have, something I've been writing since the night she took my hand." Zuri frowned. "What letter?" Walter's smile deepened. "The one that says what I couldn't, until I saw what light looked like again." Outside, the bells began to toll, echoing through the snow. Ms. Porter's hand hovered over the drawer where the sealed envelope waited, her heart pounding as she whispered, almost to herself, "It's time." The church bells began ringing before the sun. Their echo carried through the streets like breath in cold glass, slow, hollow, and final. When Ms. Porter stepped into the greenhouse, she knew before she saw. Walter sat in his chair, head tilted toward the frost-dusted window, the faintest smile still resting on his lips. His hand lay loosely over Zuri's purple scarf, draped across his lap. The lemons above him glowed faintly gold in the new light, snow falling beyond the glass just as he'd imagined. For a long time, Ms. Porter didn't move. She simply stood there, the breath in her throat thick and fragile. Then she whispered, "You made it to the bells." The funeral was small, exactly as Walter had written in his old notebook. No eulogies, no grand speeches, just gratitude. The pews filled quietly. Union workers from the schoolhouse came, their hands scrubbed clean but still calloused. Mrs. Green sat near the front, a black hat shadowing her eyes. Even Derek came, head lowered, silent. The air smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. When it was Zuri's turn to speak, she didn't go to the pulpit. She stood by the casket instead, her hands folded around the scarf he'd worn that night at the bus stop. "He told me once," she said softly, "that kindness isn't loud. It's just steady, like light that never asks for permission to shine." Her voice cracked on the last word. Ms. Porter reached over, steadying her hand, and for a brief moment, the girl who had once slept behind a market counter was no longer alone. After the crowd had gone and the snow began to thicken again, Ms. Porter found Zuri in the greenhouse. The place looked almost unreal now, white flakes tapping the glass, citrus trees bending gently under the cold. "Walter left this for you," Ms. Porter said, holding out a sealed envelope. Her eyes softened. "He wrote it the night before the gala." Zuri took it with trembling fingers. The handwriting inside was old-fashioned, steady even in its weakness. "My dear Zuri, when I lost my sight, I thought the world had closed. I mistook darkness for an ending. But you showed me that light can come from anywhere, even from a girl on a bicycle, riding through a storm. You taught me how to see again. Not with eyes, but with heart. You reminded me what my wife believed, that our purpose isn't to save the world, but to reach whoever's in front of us. Keep the light. Build it higher. And when the world turns cruel again, and it will, don't forget that you once turned back when everyone else kept riding. With gratitude, always. Walter Hensley." Zuri folded the letter against her chest, the words soaking into her like warmth. The will reading happened 2 days later in Walter's study. Snow pressed against the windows like white fog. Ms. Porter sat beside her, composed but hollow-eyed. Across the room, Gregory's lawyers whispered among themselves, already smelling blood. The executor cleared his throat. "Mr. Walter Hensley's final amendment reads as follows. I hereby name Ms. Zuri Hale and Ms. Evelyn Porter as co-chairs and stewards of the Havenlight Foundation." The words dropped like a match in dry grass. Gregory's lawyer surged to his feet. "That's absurd. She's a minor, barely 18. She has no qualifications." Ms. Porter's gaze snapped to him, sharp as cut glass. "She has integrity, something you wouldn't recognize if it were engraved on your paycheck." The executor raised a hand for silence. "Mr. Hensley's decision is final. Legal counsel confirms the paperwork was witnessed and notarized prior to his passing." Gregory's face turned pale beneath the fury. He stormed out, muttering something about publicity stunts and media sympathy. But outside those walls, the story was different. Within hours of the announcement, small donors flooded the Havenlight website. Comments poured in. Nurses, teachers, construction workers, parents, all sharing the same sentiment. She turned back. The world needs more people who turn back. Grassroots donations soared higher than any corporate pledge ever had. Someone painted the viral image of Zuri and Walter, the girl in the purple jacket biking through snow, the blind man's hand on her shoulder, on the side of the new Havenlight building. Below it, a single line: "Keep the light." That night, after everyone left, Zuri returned to the schoolhouse alone. The halls were quiet, except for the wind humming through the old pipes. She walked past the fresh-painted walls, the bunk beds lined neatly in rows, the smell of pine cleaner still sharp in the air. In the office, her bike hung on the wall, its chain broken, looped over a nail like a relic. She stood there for a while, staring at it through blurred eyes. It felt like the world had stretched too wide, grief and gratitude tangled together until she couldn't tell them apart. She sank to the floor, the letter clutched in one hand, and finally let the tears come. Not loud, not angry, just soft, steady sobs that filled the empty room like rain. When the storm in her chest finally eased, she wiped her face, stood, and found a whiteboard on the wall. The marker squeaked as she wrote the first line. Staff schedule. Havenlight opening day. Under it, she listed names: volunteers, counselors, night watch, kitchen rotation. And beside her own, she added a note: check the heaters before dawn. The snow outside thickened, soft and relentless, pressing against the windows like it wanted in. She turned off the lights, took one last look at the room, and whispered, "See you tomorrow, Walter." In the morning, the city would wake to another storm warning, but this time it wouldn't find her on a bike, alone and unseen. This time, the lights of Havenlight would be on. Morning broke under a curtain of white. The world outside was muffled, as if the city itself had paused to listen. Snow drifted in slow spirals past the windows of Havenlight, soft and unhurried, like it knew this day mattered. Inside, warmth buzzed through the old schoolhouse. The lights glowed gold against freshly painted walls. The air carried the mingled scent of soap, cinnamon, and something else. Hope, raw and new. Zuri stood in the center of it all, clipboard in hand, hair tied back, heart thudding like she'd just finished a race. The hallway hummed with life. Lockers clicked. Showers hissed behind the tiled doors. Steam curled from the kitchen. Where soup simmered in a pot someone had borrowed from Mrs. Green's market. "Doors open in 10," Ms. Porter called from near the front desk. She wore her usual blazer, though her eyes glistened when she turned to Zuri. "You ready, Director Thompson?" Zuri looked up from her clipboard, startled. "Don't call me that. You're running the place." "Still doesn't sound real." "Good," Ms. Porter said, lips curving in the smallest of smiles. "That means you're not doing it for the name." Zuri sighed, tucking a loose braid behind her ear. "Fine, but only if you promise to keep bossing me around when I mess up." "Oh, that's not a promise," Porter said, straightening her collar. "That's a guarantee." They both laughed quietly, the first easy sound in weeks. By 9 o'clock, the first teens began to drift in. 2 girls sharing a threadbare blanket. A boy with a duffel bag heavier than he was. A runaway pair from the east side, looking for heat and silence. They came shyly, almost suspiciously, as if the warmth inside might be a trick. Zuri met them each with a smile and a simple rule. Take what you need, leave what you can. Lockers clicked open. Warm water ran through pipes that hadn't worked in years. The smell of shampoo replaced dust. For the first time in months, laughter, real, quiet, healing laughter, echoed down the hallway. In the lobby, sunlight filtered through the frosted windows, catching on the mural that covered the far wall. It was the viral image, the one that had followed Zuri everywhere. A girl in a purple jacket pedaling through snow. A blind old man holding her shoulders under the streetlights. But here, it wasn't glossy or digital. It was painted by hand. Someone had left a marker tucked under the frame, and scrawled beneath the image were 5 uneven words. "We take hands here." Zuri stopped in front of it, her throat tightening. "You see this, Walter?" she whispered. "You'd have hated the attention, but maybe you'd have smiled too." Ms. Porter joined her, holding a clipboard full of intake forms. "You know what he'd have said," she murmured. "Let the work speak louder than the noise." Zuri nodded. "Then let's get loud in the right way." Mrs. Green arrived near noon, bundled in 2 scarves and carrying a steaming thermos. "Couldn't stay away," she said, handing it over with a wink. "Hot cocoa, for when the comments get loud again." Zuri took it with a laugh. "You've been reading too much of the internet." "Somebody's got to keep the wolves in the comments section fed with the truth," Mrs. Green said. "You just keep feeding people soup." She pulled Zuri into a hug that smelled like cinnamon and cleaning powder. For a moment, it felt like home, the kind of home that doesn't need a key. Afternoon melted into dusk. Volunteers packed up leftover supplies, the kids napped or played cards, and the building exhaled into a quiet rhythm that felt steady, lived in. Zuri stood by the door, clipboard under her arm, watching the snow fall harder outside. That was when she saw him. A boy, maybe 12, standing on the front steps. Torn gloves. Shoes soaked through. His shoulders hunched like he'd learned not to take up space. He hesitated at the door, eyes flicking to the sign, then to the lights inside. Zuri opened it before he could run. "Hey," she said softly. "You looking for somewhere to warm up?" He shrugged. "Didn't think you'd want me here." She smiled. "You'd be wrong." The boy's gaze lingered on her scarf hanging over her neck. "My mom used to say people who wear purple are good luck." Zuri untangled the scarf and looped it around his neck. "Then you're in luck twice," she said. "Come in. You don't have to be alone tonight." His small, cold hand found hers, and for a heartbeat, The entire story that had begun in snow and loneliness felt like it had come full circle. The church bells began to ring across the river, the same sound that had called Walter home that last morning. Zuri turned toward the lobby and hung her own scarf on a peg beside the door. A quiet promise. Threads frayed, but unbroken. The sound of the bells filled the room, mingling with the hum of heaters and the low murmur of tired voices finding rest. Ms. Porter watched from the office doorway. "You did it, you know," she said. "You built it." Zuri shook her head. "We built it." Snow swept past the glass, blurring the city lights into tiny suns. Zuri stepped outside for a moment, breathing in the cold. The air was sharp, bright, alive. She looked up, letting snowflakes cling to her lashes. "Thank you, Walter," she whispered. Then she turned, pushed open the door, and went back into work, into the light she'd helped make real. Everyone ignored the blind old man that night. Only one girl stopped, and in helping him find his way home, she found hers too. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more stories.